Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of Congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly multimodal assembly for Sunday, August 14th, 2022. We are both live in person here on Mount Curve and online, and sometimes things line up exactly and sometimes not exactly. And so doing assembly here in a television studio requires a little patience on all our parts. Whether this is one of your first visits or you've been with us many times, we are delighted that you are here as a part of this gathered community. If you're in our virtual space, joining us online, please make use of the chat feature and say hello to one another in the chat, check in with each other. For those of you in the building, we are delighted to see your faces. Thank you for wearing a mask in assembly. We hope that you'll continue to do that while we're in assembly. And we hope you'll join us downstairs in the lower assembly hall for our mini meal. Today we are having spicy Indian korma on rice and old-fashioned baked macaroni and cheese. If you're new to FUS and you're ready to find out more about our pathway to membership, that will be at noon today in my office, which is just down the hall here, and also online. And shortly I'll put that link in the chat online. You folks online may know that we had some technical challenges with our broadcast last week during assembly, and if it should happen again, we hope that you'll just keep refreshing your browser so that when we come back, you'll be back with us. Our the Vote folks are working away down in the library, and they've come now to assembly. How many of you are the Vote folks? Woohoo! Thank you. Thank you for doing this work that is the work of democracy. It's get out the vote letter writing, and there are also some calls that will be happening. Every Sunday this month, next week we start at 9 o'clock in the library on Sunday morning, and you can join a crew of people who will tell you exactly what to do. We need all of us to be involved in this the Vote effort as we become a good trouble congregation. You may know that this past weekend our building was a host to OWL, Our Whole Lives Sexuality Education Training, facilitator training. Folks from our local area and from around the country came together for this important work. And we express gratitude to our Director of Religious Education, Allison Wyeth, for her leadership in bringing that here. Our theme this season, this is the long light of summer, finding rest, wonder, and joy. Today's reading is Origin by UU Minister Lynn Unger. In the beginning, the world was a big mess. Topsy-turvy, helter-skelter, the grandest celestial mishmash of all time and space. Creation is the imposition of order, light from dark, day from night, water from air, and so on. Sometimes it works. Sometimes your carefully crafted plans tick down the rails of your decisions, running neatly on time. Sometimes not. Creation is a blessing. The careful construction of beauty and the delicate elucidation of truth is a blessing. Bending this malleable world toward justice and peace and your vision of what it could be is a blessing. but the nature of the universe is chaos. Never forget where you came from. Come, let us gather in community. Thank you, Dale. We begin our assembly by lighting our chalice as we remember one of our principles or aspirations. Today, we light this chalice for our third aspiration. We aspire to pursue wisdom through reason, science, art, and the stories of civilizations.
Let's sing together, number 6 from our Grace Songbook. The words are up there. So Dale, please rise. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, still with that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love. Remain standing.
remain standing for our congregational covenant. Let's say this together. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning. I'm Mark Johnson, and this year it is my honor to serve as the chair of the board of our foundation. Just a quick update this morning. We are extending the grant application deadline for the Pearson Fund. The new deadline is August 29th. So if you have a nonprofit where you are involved and engaged, please alert them to this opportunity and have them get a proposal in to us. If you have any questions about the fund, you can certainly find out on the website, the FUS website, or find me or one of the other FUS Foundation board members, and we can answer any questions for you. The August 29th deadline is going to be a hard one, so there will be no more extensions. So please talk to the folks you know and get those requests in. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks a lot. And yes, you can find that information on the website. And if you have any questions or can't find it, minister@firstunitarian.org is my email, and I can get back to you on that. Well, I guess you've noticed, like me, that most of the restaurants just aren't full anymore. Places that I used to expect to stand in line or have to get a reservation now are about half empty. Many restaurants have tried to work with that and get takeaway and curbside service and all kinds of things since COVID. And of course, we have been expanding our online presence. But none of that is cost-free. And FUS, as most of you know, is an independent, self-supporting congregation. It's all us here. We need your support and your volunteering, which we'll be talking about quite a bit soon, just to keep First Unitarian Society healthy. The best way to do that is to go to firstunitarian.org. We have a nice website, and go to the Give button in the upper right corner. Also, if you're a PayPal user, you can do that. Also, Vanco, the mobile app, or you can send a good old-fashioned check. For those of you who are in the building today, we will have a giving kiosk downstairs after assembly. And thank you for making the work of First Unitarian Society possible.
On Sundays when we gather, we take a few minutes to reflect on the joys, the sorrows, and the milestones of the human experience. We do this so that we stay in touch with our own humanity. We do this to remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness. And we do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating a joy or in facing the burdens of life. Today, we send good wishes to FUS member Kathleen Quinn, who will undergo an angiogram and possible angioplasty on her left leg. She's eager to get this over with, and she knows she's in good hands with her surgeon. Kathleen, our healing thoughts go with you this week. We now take a moment of silence to reflect on the challenges and the heartbreak going on in our lives and across our world. And we think with gratitude of those who are living lives of justice, service, and compassion.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
What a Wonderful World, written for Louis Armstrong by Bob Thiele and George Weiss. He recorded in 1967. Here's what he said. Some of you young folks been saying to me, "Hey, Pops, what you mean, what a wonderful world? How about all them walls all over the place? You call them wonderful? And how about hunger and pollution? They ain't so wonderful either." Lewis said, "How about listening to old Pops for a minute? Seems to me it ain't the world that's so bad, but what we are doing to it. And all I'm saying is, what a wonderful world it would be if only we'd give it a chance. If lots more of us loved each other, we'd solve lots more problems. And then the world would be a gasser." That's what old Pops keeps saying. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white. I see the bright blessed day and the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, just also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" They're really saying, "I love you." I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yes.
Thanks so much, you two. That was wonderful. And you got to hear our freshly tuned Steinway today. So how about that? Yeah. Thanks for making that happen, too. Well, medieval Europeans believed that God revealed valuable lessons in morality to humanity through nature itself. A very popular way of teaching those lessons, through a bit of church intervention along the way, were books called bestiaries, or books of beasts. Now, I hasten to add that by nature and lessons of morality, I mean the often imaginary nature created by priests and monks who didn't get out all that much in those days, and they hadn't seen very much of the real world. In other words, many of the creatures related in the books of beasts were completely imaginary. They were legends. But the books of beasts often had elaborate illustrations. And in those pre-screen days when most Europeans could not read either their own vernacular language or church Latin, the illustrations were the most important part, and they were widely admired and treasured. Now, probably the most enduring story from those books is of the phoenix, an immortal bird that cyclically flies into the flames, is burned to ash, and then regenerates into a brand new lease on life. In medieval Europe, the story was used to illustrate the sacrifice of Jesus. But it also had a subtext of personal change, kind of hitting rock bottom and starting all over again. And I think that's why that particular story has endured. Another story from the books of beasts was of weary seafarers who had been at sea too long and had run out of drinkable fresh water. As the story goes, the sailors are in utter despair for their lives, and then they see an island. They land on that island that they see, they anchor their ship to it and build a fire, planning to find some fresh water and make a hearty meal. Alas for the sailors, they have anchored themselves to a sleeping whale. The fire scorches the whale, wakes it up, and in pain, the beast dives to put out the fire. The unfortunate sailors are dragged to their doom in a watery grave. That's a cautionary tale, not only for seafarers, but for all of us, as those priests knew. As with the legend of the phoenix, there was a religious point to the tale. Anchor yourself to the only true thing in life, which is God, not the transitory illusions of safety and pleasure. But also, like the story of the phoenix, it has another underlying bit to it. Don't let your expectations get ahead of a realistic assessment of your situation. That's what I want to talk about today, expectations and pragmatic realism. After all, there appear to be a lot of islands, but indeed, a lot of them aren't there. Well, some of you know I've been on my summer vacation. I took a short sabbatical this summer. The time was, I took off. I did a long lecture back in June at the American Religious and Philosophical Thought Conference in Salt Lake City. The title of my talk was Lived Theologies of First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. I told the scholars gathered there, mostly philosophers and theologians and seminaries and religious education programs, part of the story of how this congregation has been an outlier among Unitarian Universalist congregations since we became explicitly humanist back in 1916. After all, the philosophy of humanism has changed a lot since 1916, and this congregation is not like a graduate seminar, I explained to them, in which you can just simply start up where you left off last class. Here, we deal with life and death and aging and disease and on, and the challenges and the triumphs of human life. Living a full life can be a subject in a classroom, but actually living a full life and a fulfilling life in the real world is considerably more difficult than taking a class. And an ever-changing group of human beings have navigated through this congregation all of these years. But we're still here, aren't we? The congregation continues. We are not an imaginary island. Now, I tell the story of First Unitarian Society whenever I get the chance to do that. Most people, even scholars of liberal religion, have no idea that this unique congregation exists as it has for well over a century. And speaking of graduate seminars, another sabbatical thing I was doing was preparing for a class that I'll be teaching at United Theological School this fall. We're teaching an introduction to humanism, and I'll be working with Reverend Kevin Jago, who many of you do remember. Yay! He was a member here and worked in our social media for a while, and then went off to seminary and now is a minister in Pennsylvania, and we'll be doing that class over Zoom. Now, as you may know, United Theological Seminary is now offering a humanism concentration in their graduate program, which will prepare humanists for leadership in secular groups, congregations, and chaplaincy. I've also been researching and writing for a series of 3 lectures I'll be presenting in Boston this winter, and then in the summer in the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly, which will be in beautiful downtown Pittsburgh coming up in June. It's called the Men's Lecture, not M-E-N, but M-I-N-N-S, and it's sponsored by a couple of the oldest Unitarian congregations in the country, King's Chapel in Boston and First Church in Boston. Now, the overarching subject of that series will be comparing and contrasting and thinking about the way that humanism and Pentecostalism have grown up together. And yes, they have done that, even though we don't always think of it that way. Also, I will be inviting some other former Pentecostals like me, and one of those being Jay Hooper, who will be speaking at General Assembly in Pittsburgh. Pentecostalism and humanism are both 20th century inventions, though of course they go back millennia with some of the ideas, but those two were extreme reactions to the Scopes monkey trial and evolution and that kind of thing. Humanism went into a hard materialist, naturalist reaction, and Pentecostalism went into a more of an imaginary way of thinking about that. So why did those two, what are the extremes, and why do so many of us who grew up Pentecostal then go into humanism? Well, they are extremes. They're polar opposites of each other in some very interesting ways. But, of course, you may know that there are several thousand humanists in the United States today. And there are 68 million Pentecostals in the United States today. So there seems to be a little bit of a differential in how those two did grow up over time, and I do want to look at that. So that's my summer vacation. But back to work now. The whale in the medieval books of beasts pulled a ship and its crew down to a watery grave, all because the sailors got the idea in their heads that they had been saved. We're saved, we're saved. Well, expectations were dashed. Kind of like Charlie Brown and Lucy and the football. Every time Charlie accepts Lucy's invitation to kick the football, and, well, we know what happens in the last millisecond there, don't we? So why doesn't Charlie Brown stop accepting Lucy's invitation to kick that darn football? Why does he allow his expectations to be dashed every time? But it is more complicated psychologically, isn't it? Because Charlie does wise up to some extent over time, but his skepticism is outweighed by his wish to trust Lucy and also so she won't go, "Wah, you don't trust me." But his expectations are always dashed. We've all got them, and we just know, things like, our wayward loved ones are finally going to straighten up and fly right, as the old saying goes. We just know that the United States is going to straighten up and fly right and realize that, yes, that compassion and love and justice are the right way to go. And our expectations are always dashed, aren't they? The long COVID shutdown, the effects of which we all know just keep going, has dashed all sorts of expectations: weddings, memorial services, vacation plans, even to the extent of job security. And, of course, the economy of the entire world kind of crashed, didn't it? Yet the effects continue to ripple out, and we still don't know what all of this disruption is going to do in terms of reshaping our traditional social structures, whether that be how and where we go to work or how we attend congregational gatherings. Just nobody knows what's coming up. But as a congregation, we do have to kind of decide what we're going to do. And yeah, Lucy and COVID are a lot alike. That football just keeps getting snatched away. And we say, island or whale, which is it? Well, we're not the first generation to experience dashed expectations, as you probably have thought. The Buddha long ago began teaching that attachment to desired outcomes is the cause of much of human suffering. The Buddha trimmed the message down to a very succinct point: attachment to specific outcomes is just like thinking a whale is an island. Stoic philosophers knew the danger of illusions and expectations. Marcus Aurelius put it this way, quote, "The art of living is more like the art of a wrestler than the art of a dancer. Be ready, stand firm, and expect to be hit." Saul Alinsky, one of the most successful community organizers of all time, knew the dangers of false expectations. In his book, Rules for Radicals, Alinsky was nothing if not pragmatic. That's why I still love the book. And in the introduction, he has this to say: "As an organizer, I start from where the world is, as it is, not as I would like it to be. That we accept the world as it is does not in any sense weaken our desire to change it into what we believe it should be. It is necessary to begin where the world is if we're going to change it to what we think it should be." End quote. Which, in reply, I guess I have to say, darn, I wish he wasn't right. But he is. In another entry, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A cucumber is ruined, don't eat it. There are briars in the road, go around them. That's enough to do. No reason to ask, why are there things like that in the world? People who know the nature of the world will laugh at you," he says, end quote. All about dashed expectations. So sure, we all hope to stand on solid ground. We all want to be firmly anchored rather than building fires on whales' backs. But overconfidence, we know, leads to disaster. As the emperor said, people who know the nature of the world will laugh at you. Isn't the pandemic supposed to be over after all? Darn it. I expected that we would be done after those vaccines started coming out, right? And I don't even know how many shots I've got had at this point. Do you? I mean, is it 3, 4? I mean, I just don't know. I do get all of them early because I'm a diabetic, but you know how many? I just can't count anymore. It's that darn island that I thought I saw wasn't there, was it? And so many other islands we saw were in fact sleeping whales. The Roe versus Wade decision, took a dive. The stability of U.S. democratic ideals and practices, took a dive. Endless gun violence, the climate, inflation. An author speaks at a church camp and gets stabbed. I mean, there are a lot of whales out there. The list goes on and on. They're whales, not islands. The contemporary Buddhist nun Pema Chodron puts it this way, quote, "When we resist change, it's called suffering. But when we can completely let go and not struggle against it, when we can embrace the groundlessness of our situation and relax into its dynamic quality, that's called enlightenment," end quote. As Chodron points out, when our expectations are dashed, it's an opportunity for enlightenment. If we can let go rather than just keep struggling. No, it's got to meet an island, right? If we can accept the limitations of our power and our knowledge. When we can embrace the groundlessness of our situation and relax into its dynamic quality, she says. The Buddhists are here to tell us it's all whales, right? It's all whales. My favorite aphorism concerning attachment to future outcomes comes from ancient Japan. Quote, "Demons laugh at talk of next year." Demons laugh at talk of next year. Yeah, but that said, nothing gets done without planning, does it? And we have to talk about next year, even though the wise give the various demons that come up in the details their due. What do you hope to see in the coming months here in this congregation? That's the question I would like to leave you pondering. And also, do be watching your email. There will be a congregational survey coming out in the next few weeks, just to kind of say, what are you doing, how are you doing it, and what are your wishes and expectations? We want to hear from you. And most of all, as you wander around the building or email and text and such, talk to the staff and the leaders of the congregation, and let's talk about what we want to be and what we want to do. We want you here. We want you to be part of the congregation, certainly, and we want you to be inspired to do as much or more than just to see what's going on here. So join us, and we will listen to the suppressed laughter of the demons talking of next year, but we will also stay realistic and see what happens next.
Okay, let's sing some more, if you'd like to stand. This song is not in our songbook, surprise, surprise, but the words are up there. Those who know this tune, sing out so we can all enjoy it. Okay, and Dave will play it through once in full. Okay, play it.
Coffee, praise the strength of coffee. Early in the morn we rise with thoughts of only thee. So glory heated, dark by thee defeated, brewed black by birth, or drink or instantly. Feel the holy power of a coffee hour, if late
downstairs.
Please be seated. Yes, thank you for. Yeah, that was written by a UU minister who knew us a little better than we know ourselves. Oh, please be seated. Yes, we do want to get our extinguishing the chalice words in here. If you will repeat with me, please. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All of these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again. Go out into the world, be fearless, ask questions, have coffee, hold on to what is good, strengthen the weak, comfort the fearful, serve the suffering, do what makes you come alive. Rejoice in the power of the human spirit. So may it be. Thanks so much.